All right, and now I'm going to share my screen. Rights and confidentiality. That's so weird. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to start with rights and confidentiality. So at WC Health, right, we have a person-centered and family-driven approach. We ensure that services are provided with dignity and the highest level of autonomy possible to the people we serve. What does that mean? So we're ensuring that people's preferences, needs, and values guide our treatment decisions, and that the care provided is respectful and responsive to the individual being served.
Yes. And what that looks like is on every level, because we offer we have that total care approach, right? So we offer the case management services, the psychiatry, the primary care, the therapy, housing services, that at every level that we're working with individuals, we're focusing on the strengths of the person and their family. A lot of times in our transitional living, it's reunifications, trying to, support those relationships, that might be a safe environment for that person to go into afterwards. We also use strengths in formulating our treatment plans and to offer support to clients, meaning that when clients tell us, hey, I've done a program before, these are the things that didn't work for me, we're really listening to that and supporting that. And then we also get a good grasp on the client's history. We're looking at a full picture, not just one part to the puzzle, but really taking in, medical considerations, mental health considerations, backgrounds of education, finances. We're really trying to comprise a more full picture so that we can treat the whole person. And then going into, what the client feels has worked or hasn't worked for them in the past, as well as their preferences and dislikes. And then also ensuring that clients agree with the course of action. We're not doing anything to an individual, we're doing it with an individual. And so their buy-in is especially important. And when we come from this model of care, this person-centered model, we're going to get better buy-in, because people aren't going to feel like we are strong-arming or that we're in a power struggle with them. It's going to feel like it's their plan of action, their course of action, and their treatment. And this helps with the engagement and better outcomes, ultimately.
Yes, thank you. All right. Alrighty. Grievances and complaints. So we have a grievance policy, and we have a forum for clients to document if they have any grievances to advocate for themselves. So during the intake process, the client is informed on the grievance compliant policy and given direction on ways in which they can file a grievance. So
Has anyone, sorry, not to cut you off, has anyone ever seen this before, our grievance forms? I'm seeing Shanita's nodding her head. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Love to hear that. Natalie and I will make sure everyone has access to that at the end of this training.
Yes, we will.
So our grievance policy, the reason for grievances are to get continuous feedback from clients, also to be able to address any issues that are coming up where clients might feel there's room for improvement, or if they did not like a certain decision that was made or something that's going on, within the program or within treatment. So these are readily available to all clients. They can request it, from front staff. They can request it from case management. They can request it from housing staff. And these forms, once they're completed, can be submitted to any staff member, or left in secure drop boxes. I know at various housing that looks different. And so whatever that looks like for your specific site, making sure that clients are aware of that and who they can give those forms to. And then we also have the availability to give feedback on our social medias, Google, Yelp, Facebook, and the marketing team looks at that and then can give that to the correct person to address it. Currently, our what's Trish's title?
Compliance officer. Yeah.
Our compliance officer is Trish Prestigiacomo. So she ultimately is looking at all of these grievances and feedback forms.
Yes. Okay. So all forms are to be collected by the supervisor. So if you get a grievance from a client, please give it to your direct supervisor by the end of the business day. And then so give it to the supervisor, and then they will pass it on to our compliance officer, Ms. Trish Prestigiacomo. And also the marketing department will forward them whenever possible, right? When it's on the internet, right? Social media. So everything can be addressed while the person is in the program area will be managed, directly by that person or their designee. So making sure, give it to your supervisors, and then your supervisors will pass it on to the quality assurance, yes, or compliance officer. Yes. And make sure it happens within that same business day, please.
Mm-hmm. And then once that form's received by quality assurance, by Trish, it's looked over and each issue is addressed and documented. And then the outcomes related to the complaint may or may not be disclosed to the grieving party. So this depends on, as clients are filling out this form, we're explaining to them if they would like to be contacted, maybe for additional information. Sometimes for the outcome is sometimes given. That's on a case-by-case basis and really on a needs-to-know basis, depending on what that grievance is about. But if they would like to be contacted, they can put their contact information, a good cell number, their name. It can also be filed anonymously. And I've found that that's really helpful to let clients know as well, is that they don't have to put their name on this, because a lot of times we're working with individuals coming from institution settings or kind of with a mentality that if I'm giving any type of feedback, that might be snitching, or, there could be fears of retaliation. So it's really important that we're supporting empowerment for our clients and really encouraging that there's zero tolerance for retaliation, and that they do not have to put their names on these forms if they would not like to be contacted. But just making sure they know that if there's no contact information, there's no way they could be informed of that ongoing situation. And then in the event that the person who fills out this form is dissatisfied with the resolution, they can appeal. So we have not only a grievance form, but then we also have an appeal form. So we'll make sure that y'all have, it's actually the same
on the same form.
It's on the same form. It's just noted differently when they're going through and filling it out. If they've already made a grievance, that appeal is a box that they would check on the same form the next time that they're going through this.
Yes. And then if a client may have some barriers to literacy or writing due to their current situation, definitely you and another person, right? You would just have, if you were filling it out, you would have to have a witness signature, and then the client themselves would sign to the best of their ability.
Yeah. So I have had to do that before with that other witness or party involved. It does need to be another staff member Can't just be a client, another client. It's yourself, another staff member, and then the client. And you are writing as the scribe in those scenarios if the client is unable to do so.
Yes. Okay, so yes, and if the client is dissatisfied with the outcome of their grievance, they can file an appeal within 60 days of the receipt from the treatment program's decision. So they can appeal. This appeal will be reviewed and decided by appropriate staff that is separate from the staff that brought forth the first decision, right? So a different set of eyes will address the situation as well. WC Health will respond to any appeal within 5 business days of receiving that appeal.
Mm-hmm. And what I didn't know until it was asked by a client is that we do have this procedure outlined as well. So I had a client, ask what's the procedure, and I gave them the best, to my understanding, of exactly what we're going through. But then they asked to see that procedure form. And so we do have that as well that we can make available to you all. So clients' rights within our intake paperwork. If you've seen that packet, it's a hefty packet and it has purpose to it. Yeah, we've seen the packet. Really important that before clients are starting any of our services, they have signed consents for treatment, meaning that they have been informed of what treatment is going to look like, what our processes are, and that they are able to go through that packet and give consent for treatment. So historically, we have worked really closely with SAPTA. So this first part is going into with SAPTA, clients have the right to be informed of treatment, regardless of whether or not they can, to be provided treatment, regardless of whether or not they can afford to pay it. And the program is prohibited from imposing any fee or contract, which would be a hardship for clients or family. Clients have the right to be provided treatment appropriate to their needs. So meaning that, if they're interested in the service that we offer, we're going to give them that, we're going to link them to that assessment. We're going to link them to that provider so that they can determine if that's something they'd like to continue. And then with transfers to another treatment provider, clients have the right to be given an explanation of the need for such transfer and of alternatives available, unless such transfer is made due to a medical emergency. So really just that we're communicating treatment to clients, keeping them in the know, and making sure that they have all the information provided so that they can make the best decision for their care.
Yes. So our clients have the right to be informed of all program services, which may be benefit to their treatment. They have the right to get clinical records forwarded to a receiving program, right? So they're going to have to fill out a release of information and then inform medical records, right? So we will never be printing out any psych notes or AMAs, right? Therapy assessments and giving them directly to a client. There is policies and procedures, and always just make sure that a release of information is in the chart and that it's filled out correctly. I believe that is in that training from Kate. Hopefully the ROIs and making sure that we're not just filling out all the boxes with the initials, only the boxes that apply for continuity of care, right? It's because we also want to protect our clients, right? What information is needed to be released and to what agency, and that we go through medical records. They have the right to be informed of the name of person responsible for the coordination of their treatment. When you're meeting with a client, please introduce yourself, obviously with your name, and also like your role, because I know clients, when they're coming in through PUF, right, they're meeting with psychiatrists, therapists, case management, right? They're meeting with so many individuals. I know that they think I'm the prescriber. I'm like, no, I'm, talk therapy. So just really informing them of your name and your role. Also, if I know in our programs, a lot of times the case manager, they get transferred, right? If they move from one program to another. And so if possible, right, informing them, hey, you're moving to this location, you're going to have a new case manager. They will introduce themselves when you arrive on property. That they can kind of get a verbal communication of what their journey likes within what it is in our program. Because a lot of times, right, these individuals have not been in a structured lifestyle for some time. So they can be pretty unaware, right, of what's going on. So I find that if we could just guide them with our words of what is actually happening, that could be very helpful for them. And then also with them trusting the process and us as an agency. I think that could definitely ease some fears and confusion. They have a right to be informed of their diagnosis, and that would be by the provider, right? So if psych provides a client with a diagnosis, I'm not going to be discussing that or medications, right? I'm going to refer to that provider. Also, as a therapist, I can inform them of what I have diagnosed them with and their treatment plan. For those of you in case management, I don't think about Sana, but other programs, right? We're going to be reaching out to case management to have the clients help us have case management help us have the client sign their treatment plan, right? Because that is being in Medicaid compliance. So it's very important. Also, right, consent to treatment. We cannot stress enough how important it is for the clients to fill out the forms of consent to treat, because we cannot treat if they have not given consent. Yes. And also medical risk, the name of the person responsible for treatment, estimated costs, and description of alternative treatment. Sometimes if individuals are being assessed and they only have a substance use disorder, right, we are referring out to other agencies, because what we do is either those with mental health symptoms and or mental health and substance use disorder. So if they only have a substance use diagnosis, they would need to be referred out and to give them that information.
Absolutely. Clients also have the right to be informed if the facility proposes to perform experiments that affect their treatment, and the right to refuse participation in such experiments. I also relate this to, we have interns who are, approved by various boards and who work at the agency under a supervisor. And sometimes we have junior case managers, right? So things of that nature also need to be shared with clients for their understanding. And so that they can accept, yes, that's okay with them to be working with that provider. Clients also have the right to examine their bill for treatment and receive an explanation for that bill. We would direct them to do this through their insurance, because we can't provide EOB's explanation of benefits, but the insurance can. So really important that we can direct them to insurance for that. And then clients also have the right to be informed of program rules for conduct at the facility. And this looks different at each facility, so making sure that we're going through those when a client first comes in to set them up for success. And then lastly, clients have the right to refuse treatment to the extent permitted by law, and to be informed of the consequences of such refusals. And they have the right to receive respectful and considerate care. So we do have standards, we do have regulations that we follow as an agency. However, clients can choose not to agree to that. And so then we would look at consequences, such as maybe a different program is more beneficial to their needs. If they're not willing to comply with some of that, or simply don't want to receive that treatment, that's when we would look at making those appropriate referrals to other programs that might benefit them.
So the client has the right to receive continuous care, to be informed of appointments for treatment, the names of the program, staff available for treatment, and any need for continuing care. Really just meeting the client where they're at and informing them of the structure of the program that they are in, and what's available to them, and also what their treatment plan, like what the time frame is very important. I call our transitional living programs like the lily pad, right? So they're hopping on the lily pad, they're getting their foundation more secure and solid while they're looking at other long-term programs or where they are going to go, right? Are they going to reconnect with family? What is their plan? And having those conversations at the beginning, I have found to be more helpful, and the clients to be more successful so they know what is coming their way. Also, they have the right to be make any reasonable request for services. Reasonability satisfied by the program considering its ability to do so, right? In some of our housing, right, if a client needs a bottom bunk, right, versus a top bunk, that sort of thing, and making sure that accommodations. Also, everything, all their treatment is confidential, right? We need to adhere to HIPAA. And this means that other expectations defined by law, such as those in which public safety takes priority. So so we can't release any information, including right confirmation or denial that they're right. So we can neither confirm nor deny, right, if anyone is in our facilities. I love that. When I started working in mental health 16 years ago on April Fool's Day, no joke, um, that is what I learned, right? I can neither confirm nor deny. And still 16 years later, that is definitely a phrase that I have continued to use. So I can yeah, neither confirm nor deny.
And then also clients have the rights of waiver of any civil or other right protected by law, cannot be required as a condition of program services. So basically in this, we cannot do anything unlawful in our consideration for treatment, for services. Clients also have the right to freedom from emotional, physical, intellectual, or sexual harassment or abuse. And that's a big reason for the need for grievance forms. Also, reminding and encouraging clients of these rights, that they can utilize public service agencies as well if any of these concerns are coming up. And then clients also have the right to attend religious activities of their choice, including visitation from a spiritual counselor, to the extent that such activities do not conflict with program activities. So this is going to go through the program. I work really closely at Nellis Housing, and I have seen where, a lot of clients have been able to, in communicating with case management, program staff, are able to, uphold some of their religious standards and practices, where that might consider, what they're eating through the program, or being able to get passes to attend retreats or spiritual or religious activities. So I've seen that a lot of times, and that's something we can encourage our clients to communicate, and that we can, as staff, work to accommodate. The program shall not make reasonable accommodation. The program shall make reasonable accommodation to your chosen religious activities. Attendance at and participation in any religious activity is to be only on a voluntary basis.
Mm-hmm. Yes. There we go. Okay. So again, right, the clients have a right to grieve actions and decisions of the facility staff, which they believe are inappropriate, including but not limited to the actions, decisions, right, which if they feel like their rights have been violated as a patient, the facility is obligated to develop a grievance procedure, for timely resolution of complaints for patients. Should I share the grievance form, Audrey?
Yeah, let's go through that.
Yeah, I thought I would do that. Okay, so at the top of the form, right, you can see the name of the person completing the form, their contact number if they want to be notified of the determination of the grievance. May we call you for more information? Right? If they say no, then we are not going to be able to contact them. If they don't put a contact number or their name, we're not going to be able to contact them. And letting them know that it is confidential, right? And that we will not allow any retaliation from any staff whatsoever. So please make sure that they check if it's a grievance, if it's feedback, right? We could just get a form with feedback or the appeal. So we want to have the date of the incident, or sometimes clients come forward later and don't know the exact date, but try to narrow down the time frame to the best of your ability. Is this related to a person? Yes or no? If yes, please provide the name. Is this related to a service, a staff member, or a process? Right? So have them explain, and then they can write here what had occurred, right? What they're documenting. And if they need more space, right, they can fill out another piece of paper, line paper, blank printer paper. And then what here at the bottom of the second page, WC Health's response, the date, the staff involved, the response. And then there'll be a signature, and then also our quality assurance, right, compliance officer will also write in the outcome of this form submitted.
Mm-hmm.
I have a
And
question.
clients can request a copy of that.
The form, like we have this here at aviation, but not the second page. So is the second page once it's turned in and what staff handles?
It's done at the time of the incident, but it's not filled out by the client, which is probably why you have just the one form.
Okay.
That's what the client fills out, and then the second page is what staff fills out.
Okay.
So if they're requesting their copy of it, it would be their grievance, what they wrote.
Okay.
Yes. Any other questions? Does everyone have access to this form?
No, if we could get a copy of it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I don't believe I've seen that form, but I'll ask. Where it-
N. Schmal, SCHMAL. NICHOLE. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, right, because I'm still sharing my screen. And then who else?
Me, Tanasha.
Tanasha and Sharita. And we'll just go into the text. Nope. What's your email, Angela?
I'll share it with her.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nicole will forward it to me.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to be done doing this, and I'm going to go back and sharing the other the presentation. Yes. So, right, they have a right to grieve actions and decisions, and now you have access to the form. Right, and so we have a grievance procedure. If a client asks about our grievance procedure, you can go to your supervisor, right, and they will ensure or direct you on where that is. And I'm sure it's in the employee handbook. Is that accurate?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, but just go to your supervisor and they will assist. Complaints from patients. Yes. So now that you have access to that, right? Because our clients have the right to be free from retaliation or other consequences and to advocate for themselves. And that is the way in which they can advocate for themselves. I am super proud of WC Health and our grievance policy and procedure because it does go to listening ears. So I always encourage clients, like if they're very upset or disgruntled with something, I encourage them to advocate for themselves, right? And this is a way in which they can do that.
And then as well, clients have a right to file a complaint with the state of Nevada. If they are in a housing facility, Nicole had just said, state of Nevada is in her facility today, right? So they as well have the right to be able to file complaints or grievances with this at the state level. These are the addresses listed here are not pertaining to Las Vegas. That would be in Reno, Nevada. Although
I think that's just the overall state.
Okay, it's the same. Oh, because it's in the capital. Okay, that makes sense. So SAPTA, or the Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Agency, is one of the state agencies that they can file that grievance with. Nevada, Southern Nevada Health District is also where they could do that. So there are these means by which they can file complaints outside of the agency.
Also with their insurance, right? They can as well.
Definitely.
With their provider, if it's Anthem, whatever their insurance is.
Yeah, exactly. Good point, Nat. And then clients have the right to be informed of their rights as a patient, which is why it's especially important that we're doing this at the very beginning of treatment. I like to think of it as if any of us were walking into an agency, going to a doctor, going to therapy. We would want all of this information. So really important that we're upholding that for clients as well, the same things that we would want to be seeing walking through the door, that they have that same right. And clients are to be informed of these rights and given a listing of them as soon as it is practically possible upon beginning treatment.
Aha. So what is a peer review and how is it related to the rights of the people we serve? So I'm going to go ahead and open up this question to the attendees of this training. Anybody have any best guesses?
A peer review?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be, well, I'm guessing, because I know we were going to do peer-to-peer. We were supposed to open the clubhouse as peer-to-peer for clients. Would that be other clients in the talking about it or expressing their same things?
It's a good guess.
Good guess.
That would be employees talking about a situation with a client. Yeah. So
There
that
you
would
go.
be like me talking to Audrey in regards to a client that I'm having a situation with. Okay, I ain't that dumb today.
You're good.
Yeah, exactly that. And any thoughts on how this benefits clients or upholds their rights for treatment?
It gives them a point to express their needs, their concerns, how they feel about the program and whatnot, the pros and cons about it. Because I know they always feel that they don't have a say so and stuff are just thrown at them. So it gives them a right to have a say so of what they feel they're needed for their treatment and what they feel the benefit is and the pros and cons, or they a lot of them feel like things are just thrown at them. So I give them the opportunity to express what do they feel they need to be successful.
Nice. Thanks, Tanisha.
You're welcome.
Did I say that wrong? Is it Tanasha?
It's Tanasha.
Tanasha, thank you.
Natasha. Okay.
Yeah. Any other thoughts about peer reviews?
Will we also be getting our peers' point of view, or maybe they may know something a little more than we know, or we may have doubts about what we want to do, and they may give us some insight on, hey, maybe you're right at what you're thinking, or no, I'll try it this way or that way.
Yes, absolutely. That part of it as well.
Yes. Thank you for your participation. A peer review is when equals in a field of practice examine each other's work, right? To provide one another with the goal being continuous quality service that adheres to evidence-based practice. This also, right, when we're going over documentation, right, and our supervisor is looking and making sure that we're adhering, right, to what we are, right? Because if we didn't document it, then it didn't happen, right? And I know a lot of times our case managers are doing the due diligent work, right? But if it's not documented, we can't say that it has been done. So that's also another, since I've been in the field, that if I didn't document it, then it didn't happen. And I'm definitely one that ensures that things happen. So I make sure that my documentation adheres to that. Absolutely. And this promotes clients' rights by ensuring that the services provided are of the utmost excellence and aligns with evidence-based practice. So all of this person-centered approach, right? Research has shown that it is more effective, right? That the outcomes with the individuals will be more effective or substantial to the client. And yes, they may come back again. However, because we listen to them the first time, they'll be like, oh, well, I tried that and that's what I wanted to do, but I still keep getting the same outcome, right? So then they're more willing if they circle back, right? So that is something that I have found more recently of letting people, right? Okay, they want to go this route, let's go. And then if they come back, it's like, okay, so we did that. Where did you get stuck? What barriers were there, right? And not that the barriers were that staff wasn't listening to them, because it was their own map that they wanted. So I have found that it is more effective, maybe not in the moment, but if they return, they're like, oh. And then definitely I'm part of meetings where I staff with case management as well. And we meet on a bi-weekly basis, which is compliant for Medicaid policy and procedure.
So a little bit on confidentiality. Well, a lot on confidentiality. What is it? And defined simply, it's the obligation of one party to respect privacy by protecting the personal information that they receive and preventing it from being used or disclosed without the subject's knowledge and permission. So this is a big right for our clients, is the right to confidentiality. We will go into some of the limitations of confidentiality, but confidentiality exists, really at every level of what we're doing. Clients coming into our agency are informed that we do staff things, right? So those peer reviews, or when we have supervisors, or, communicating to another provider within the organization, like psychiatry, that they're aware that we do communicate when it's mutually beneficial to the client. And if we're communicating outside of the agency, we do need to have ROIs, because that is a client saying that they are okay with us sharing that information It's also really important that when we are discussing anything on a client's behalf, we keep that to a needs to know basis, right? So we're not just sharing anything and everything about Jim. We're sharing what's relevant for Jim to get the benefit that he needs, to receive the service that he's needing, or to, you know, if we're talking to a colleague, to be able to get their perspective in that peer review process. It's really easy to get into gossiping and say that, well, it's within agency, so it's still confidential. That's not what confidentiality means. It means that we're doing no harm to the client. And so if we're having those really meaningless, kind of pointless conversations, because you're human, and because that might be at a time entertaining, that's not what confidentiality is. And it's something that as staff, we need to be really aware of and conscientious of, because it can't be harmful to clients' well-being. And when we're upholding confidentiality, we are holding respect for the client, for their unique needs and situations.
Yes. Thank you so much, Audrey. You took the words right out of my mouth. The need to know basis. Also, you know, because I also have to keep myself in check, right? I have to ask myself, wait a minute, what information needs to be shared? So we can get a little complacent. Yeah, so I always like to use that as the lens, right? That I use, right? Like I put on my lens, like what do I need to share? So, because we're human. Yeah. Great job, Audrey. So we'll go over this one, confidentiality, right? There are many aspects. So again, right, everything is confidential, except, right, if a client is in danger to themselves and or others, right? If there are minors at risk, vulnerable adults, or those who are seniors, right? We cannot, that information, if it's shared with us, we have to observe and report. Also, again, if there's a court order issued to obtain records, so that would be if anybody's ever given a court order for records, right? We pass that on to the clinical director in the South and the North, and that is Trish Precious-Giacomo. So any court orders go to your supervisor, and then they will refer to Trish. So if people are saying, I want to kill myself, and I have a plan, and I have the means to initiate the plan, right? Then what they are disclosing to their team is no longer confidential. Yes. Is everyone aware of that? Yes, I'm getting 2 head nods. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
And also, like other people, right? I've had a client, an IOP, let me know that they were living with a person who was neglecting their medical needs. And I'm like, whoa, you just shared all that information. So now you're going to have to, what I say is, I don't know this person. I don't know the address. I don't know details, but you do. So I strongly encourage them to call and make a welfare check. And what had happened was the individual, had they not called a welfare check on this person, they had a blood infection. They would have died. So if someone's disclosing information about other populations, children, adults, senior, vulnerable adults, I would say, okay, let's call together because you know the information. You shared this. Now it's like our due diligence to advocate for this person who's not able to advocate for themselves for whatever reason. So I can say that it actually has saved a life that I'm aware of, and I'm sure it's happened other things. So I just wanted to share that example with you guys.
Awesome. And then a little bit about HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Privacy, security, and breach notification rules protect the privacy and security of health information and give patients right to their health information. HIPAA establishes standards to safeguard the protected health information that you hold if you're one of these covered entities or their business associate. So if you're the health plan, the healthcare clearinghouse, or the healthcare provider that conducts certain healthcare transactions electronically. So that pertains to all of us. And I know we all go through the HIPAA training and onboarding, but this is a good refresher and reminder of what that personal health information is and our obligation to uphold confidentiality in that regard.
Yes. All right, privacy rule, right, protects patients with PHI while letting you securely exchange information to coordinate the patient's care. The privacy rule also gives the patient the right to examine and get a copy of their medical records, including an electronic copy of their medical records. Again, we're referring them to our medical records department always. They can request corrections, restrict their health plan's access to information about treatments they paid for in cash. Yes, and there is a form for that, right? In the therapy department, especially with private insurance, a client did not want to use their private insurance because their copay was more than our self-pay. And so there's a form that they can fill out, and that they do not want to bill their insurance and can proceed as a self-pay. So that would be more of the front desk, right? As they're checking in for psychiatry, therapy, and then now our primary care has been kind of separated to first person. Yes, you're allowed to report child abuse and neglect to authorities. Yes. I think right now we're going to take a break. So we're going to hydrate ourselves. We're going to use the restroom, and then we will come back at 9:14. Thank you.
I'm about to pull my hair out. Natalie, when we're done, I want to speak with you on a one-on-one.
Okay, absolutely. We can, I can send you an invite. We'll make something work.
Okay.
I think we talked about that one. Okay, so we're jumping right back in. Confidentiality and HIPAA continue, right? It protects protected health information or personal health information you hold or transmit in any form, including electronic, paper, or verbal. PHI includes information about common identifiers, such as an individual's name, their address, their date of birth, social security number, also current, past, or future physical and mental health conditions, healthcare you provided to the patient, also, looks like that's twice, the treatment provided. So everything is confidential. So if you have anything on your desk, making sure that the papers are turned upside down, right? And then when we leave, does everyone have like a locked filing cabinet? I'm getting a head nod. Nicole has one. Shanita, no. Also, if there's information, and that's something, right, we can jot down. And you're at, where are you? Aviation?
Yeah, I don't think our desks have locks on them, but they're working on getting us a filing cabinet, so we'll have one.
Okay.
It's
They
being
are.
worked. Yes.
Perfect. And then, sometimes you have information wrote on a sticky note about a client, and then I just go take it to the shredder, right? Just automatically shred, because everything, right? We have EHR, electronic medical records, right? So if we're jotting stuff down, making sure that we're shredding it. Also, if I'm ever writing down information about a client, I only use initials. So that also keeps confidentiality. And then if you're using your personal phone, right? Does anybody have an employee work phone? No. So if you're using your personal phone and texting about clients, only initials, like my heart drops when I get a text with the full name of a client. I'm like, what are we doing? So initials, if, or EHR, using EHR and our Google chat, right? Because all of that is HIPAA protected, right? All of this information is covered. So I would say no texting about clients on our personal phones. Absolutely not. Use EHR and Google Chat, please. So, because that would be ensuring that we're HIPAA compliant. Yes. And it can get cropped because it's easier, but just to be compliant and protect their information, I would encourage everyone to do that.
Absolutely. The HIPAA privacy rule also requires you to notify patients about their privacy rights and how you use their information. This is an ongoing conversation. Like even when I'm working with a client in one-to-one therapy, and I have some concerns of symptoms that I'd like to relate to psych, I still ask, right? That's something that I can do. They're within agency. That would not be a breach or a violation of their rights. But it still is something that I ask because kind of like what was brought up earlier, clients don't like to feel like things are thrown at them. They don't want to go into psych and then hear, well, the therapist is worried about this, and this. That's just something for good communication and good engagement and buy-in that is an ongoing conversation to have. Also, when we're doing ROIs, being able to explain why are we doing the ROI? Why would we like to do the ROI? and still acknowledging that if they don't want to sign an ROI, we cannot force anybody to do that. The HIPAA privacy rule also requires us to adopt privacy procedures and train employees to follow them. So all these safeguards Natalie's talking about, I would also add not sharing passwords. That's one that I see in here that like makes my heart sink a little bit.
What?
Nobody should have your
Oh,
passwords, your login information. We shouldn't be logging in for other coworkers. You know, can you print this off for me? Absolutely not. It's really important that for HIPAA, we all have our own passwords, our own sign-ins, our own logins. And then lastly, secure patient records containing the protected health information so they aren't readily available to those who don't need to see them. I have loved the Windows L control on my computer when I get up, when I'm going to the bathroom. It's a hassle to sign in every time, but I'd rather it be that than have a breach, intentional or unintentional. And that's how I can safeguard the information that's on my logins. So if you haven't used that feature yet, it's the Windows L and it'll lock your computer for you in a second.
yes. And that the Windows is in between your Control and then Alt, right? In the bottom left-hand corner of your keyboard, Window and L, and how we lock it that way, just in case, because I didn't. I was like,
Learn something new.
yes,
And I'm a shortcut queen.
yes, eh? Yes. Working smarter, not harder. Hopefully. Yes. Confidentiality and HIPAA, sharing information with other healthcare professionals. I really love what Audrey said. Also, if a client is disclosing information that's happening in housing, I will ask their permission. Can I, what room are you in? Right? Oh, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that your roommate is doing drugs right in front of you. Right? You know, so I'm like, hey, can you give me your room number? And then we can do a sweep of like 4 in a row. So it's not like singled out. But I do ask their permission so that they know that something's gonna happen without it being like them caught off guard, and that I do not destroy like rapport and trust to the helping professionals, right? Because a lot of people who are in our programs have a hesitancy of disclosing information to helping professionals because of stigma associated to that or past experiences. And so really anything that you're doing, just basically inform the client, right? That they let them know, because it's their life, right? Their journey. And most of the time, I would say my rapport with client is like 95% because I just tell them what is, right? Yeah. So share pertinent information about incapacitated patient if you believe it is in the best interest of the client. If we're calling emergency and the client is not well, I always make sure that their face sheet is printed, and also list of current medications, right? If REMSA, I don't know what it's called in Las Vegas, right? If EMTs and fire department is coming, right, for a client, I always make sure that, because then that doesn't, all of that confidentiality in that moment, because it's an emergency, right, give them the face sheet and current medications. And they're very excited when I give that. Our first responders, they're like, oh, you know, and they don't have to write on their glove like what medications they're taking. It's kind of like a breath of fresh air. Only, right, and when we have called emergency. Also, privacy rule, using health information for research purposes. No. Use email, phone, or fax machines to communicate. Also, like scanning. Also, with insurance, I believe, and like Social Security, that communication, there still is faxing going on, I've heard. with other healthcare, as long as you use safeguards. So again, just really being mindful and using the lens, like, what if this was my information? How would I want the my staff to communicate it to other people or lug it around, right? Like, how would I want my information and my identity to be handled? So kind of use that lens too, because we would want our information safe and protected, and our clients deserve the same. And also, it's the law.
Thanks, Nat. So this one, and would love to hear anybody else's thoughts on this, because I have some just a little bit different procedure on this. This says that the privacy rule lets us give information to patients, family, friends, or anyone else the patient identifies as involved in their care. My qualifier for that would be when there's an ROI. And the reason that that's such a stipulation for me is because I could on Monday work with a client and they are super willing to give all this information to friends and family, and they verbally give me consent. And then on Tuesday, they could have a falling out with their family, and now they're upset that I gave the information that I gave on Monday. So I like to get this in writing. ROIs can always be revoked, but with all of this information, I would say when you have an ROI. And would love for anybody else's thoughts in that, just having a conversation.
One thing I did notice when I first came and they had their ROIs, I came from ADA paratransit as well before coming here. And one thing that they have the tendency not to separate is emergency contact and who can have information. So if I give Natalie permission for them to contact her because I'm sick or something, that doesn't mean I'm giving permission for you to disclose all my personal information like I would give to Audrey. And that's something I noticed that they don't separate, because it's not the same. It was listed as the same thing. I know you have a new ROI. I don't know if it's separated now, but of course we had to be HIPAA compliant in paratransit. I was in California in paratransit.
Yeah,
Those two things are not the same.
you're absolutely
Similar, but they're not.
Yeah, similar, but not the same. You're absolutely right. Now our emergency contact information is in that intake paperwork, and that's it. That's the only emergency. It's right by the insurance ROI is where that emergency contact is. Yeah. But if it's anybody else that they're just wanting, it's maybe they want for a family member to be communicated to about progress that they're making in treatment. That would be a separate ROI, and it would need to be as specific as what's going to be disclosed. So you're exactly right, that Shanita, it's emergency is for an emergency only, period, point blank. And then anything else would need to be covered in a separate ROI. Yeah, that one's super important. Any other thoughts? So I think when in doubt, get an ROI is the best practice and best policy. In an emergency, it's not necessary. We're covered in that by HIPAA. But in some of these other situations, I would caution get an ROI because then it's a written agreement, not just a verbal understanding. Because sometimes those verbal agreements, they change, where with a written record, we can revoke that at any time, but it stands alone.
Yes. Are you done with this slide?
I am done with this slide.
Thank you. Okay, so HIPAA and 42 CFR Part 2. So this also is important for WC Health, right? Substance abuse treatment entity. So depending on what program we're talking about, we But right now we're a provider type 17, which is for co-occurring and not just substance use disorders. But what I really enjoy about WC Health is that we just adhere to the highest standard, right? Regardless if we're credentialed with SACTA or other information, but we just keep that standard. So even if anything changes, that we are adhering to the highest standard of practice and compliance with Medicaid and HIPAA and 42 CFR regulations. Sometimes it's difficult to understand the differences between the two. Pretty much 42 CFR is even more complex and secure than HIPAA. So if we just adhere to ROIs no matter what, right? And if you ever have a doubt, please contact your supervisor. And if they don't have an answer, then they can reach out to Trish.
Yes. So when it comes to breaches, I don't know if any of you have ever gotten that really exciting piece of mail in the paper and it says your information has been breached by your credit card or whatever else it is. Yeah, I've had that one before, right? It's not a fun time. And it's also procedural, right? That anytime that there's a breach that could even possibly affect patients or health services, and in some cases media, however that breach has come about, it's usually meaning that there was an unpermitted use or disclosure under the privacy rule. There's human error. There's also sometimes electronic barriers and issues and hackings and sometimes things of that nature that would be the results of a breach. And when that happens, it is required that the party that has that information, the party that has been breached, shares that with those who have been affected. And the way that we would go about that is by communicating to our supervisor. So I remember, I'll share this one because it was a big learning opportunity for me. I was going quick. I was doing a discharge letter. Had a client, she'd come in for an assessment and I was referring her somewhere else. Her first language was not English. And so I had found a therapist in Las Vegas who spoke her first language. And as I'm going through doing that referral letter that has our on our closures, it has referrals, I didn't change the name of the previous client. And so it had a different client's name and her information on it. So I shared that with my supervisor. There weren't any other identifiers, birthday, social, nothing of that nature, but shared that with my supervisor because of the possibility for the breach there. And was a really good learning experience for me of needing to slow down. Those things are really important and really matter. And was able to communicate that with the supervisor and with the client. And so that was really helpful on my behalf. And it wasn't hard to do. It really just took a couple minutes of my time, was something that has prevented that from ever happening again, I can say. But that was one of my experiences where I had let that information out and had to follow up in that way.
Thank you. Yeah. And so you informed the client as well?
Yep. And it was uncomfortable, but really important to do. And so that's the way forward. And I found a lot of times people appreciate that and can give grace to it as well. Or at least that was my experience in that scenario. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Audrey.
Absolutely.
So the unpermitted use or disclosure of protective health information is a breach unless there's a low probability the PHI has been compromised based on risk of assessment. So again, we're going to report to our supervisor. Our supervisor will report to our compliance department, and it's up to them to decide, right, of what the risk is. So the nature and extent of PHI involved includes types of identifiers, like how many were them, likelihood of re-identification, the unauthorized person who used the PHI or got the PHI disclosed, whether the individual can acquired or view the PHI. So in the example Audrey gave, it was a client's name and no other information. So also, right, if it were, so it just depends on what, if it's a plethora on one information or, so just really being mindful of everything that we do because it's very important. So again, right, we have to notify if there's a breach, especially when we do our HIPAA compliant training, right, through, eventually it'll be through Trainial. And I think in the past it's been through the portal, right, our HIPAA training. Who has done that?
I think everybody does it in onboarding.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I did mine. But I have a question regarding that email that you were just discussing, just to be clear. That was, it went to someone else at the company or went to someone else outside of the company?
Outside.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And then Nicole, I just wanted to make sure, is Janet right there? Because I haven't been able to see her. Hi.
Hi.
Yes.
Okay. There she is in the flesh. Okay. I just want to see your face, honey.
Hello.
Thank you. Yes. Any other questions? Okay. Next slide.
So consents for treatment, we talked about this in depth, and it's vital for a person seeking services or their family or guardian to sign a consent to receive services. We don't in Las Vegas work with minors. Reno does, and so that's where the family, the guardian, comes into play. If a person is under 18 years of age, then it would be the parental consents or the guardian consents. And WC Health makes this a part of the intake process. Services cannot, not even a should, it's a cannot be extended without this written consent.
Yeah. And also it could be a vulnerable adult, right, who has a guardian, right? Has anybody ever worked with somebody who has a guardian? Yes.
Yes.
And it adds a layer. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very
It
important.
slows up the process for a lot of things because everything you have to refer to the guardian. They want to get things done. You're like, no, I have to speak with your guardian.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you don't speak with the guardian, some are very hands-on and some are not. So it delays it. It could be weeks. Like that, it's where clients want to spend money. They have to get approval. They have to sign up. The guardian has to approve it.
Mm-hmm.
So it just depends on the public guardian. Some are good and some are not.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes it's the difference of a payee versus a guardian. And a payee would be, monetarily. Though a payee doesn't need to receive information about services, like what you're doing as far as case management, unless it involves those things. So that's where there's some differentiation too, like with the emergency contacts versus general releases of information. Payees don't always have the same privilege of information to other medical records or other treatment. But yeah, for sure, when it comes to fiscal services or things requiring the client to pay, then they're involved.
And you have to remind them of that too.
Mm-hmm.
They feel privileged to everything. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I can't disclose this.
Yeah,
That's whoever we need to speak with, but I'm not able to do so.
That's a great reminder. Yeah, and I'm glad to hear that you've been able to uphold that for your clients because it's
Definitely.
really important.
I'm guilty of that. I'm his mama. Why you can't tell me?
And I was just speaking to the guardianship, right? It could be for the person or the financial, right? Medical decisions and or the financial decisions. right? Guardianship in Nevada. And then in California, they call that conservatorship. Oh, yeah. Okay, consent, right? Consent means a written agreement, as Audrey was saying, right? Just because someone verbally said I could speak to so-and-so about this and that, that is not enough. That does not suffice. Or how about off the record, right? How many, I used to work at an agency, I will not disclose it, and the social worker there would call people in the community and would start the conversation with off the record.
Mm.
Oh Lord. And then yeah, so that's not great. In written agreement, we want it documented, right? Because if it's not documented, then it didn't happen, right? And so not only are you doing this for the well-being of our clients, but also in regards to in your due diligence for yourself. I know Audrey and I are licensed professionals in the right also, but case management as well. Like our field is small, right, in the areas that we live in, right? And we also have a like personal reputation. And when we are an employee of WC Health, we also are adhering to the reputation of our company as well. So informed consent, ROIs required before. Oh yeah. Don't say, oh, well, I'll have the conversation and I'll get the client to fill out the ROI after. No. Have it done before. And best practice for me is I'll even make sure it's in the chart before I send the email. Like I don't mess around, because what happens if it gets misplaced and isn't uploaded to the chart, or it's uploaded to another chart? So always ensuring that it's there.
Yeah, because it's not actually a valid ROI until it's in the charts. ROIs on our desk are considered invalid. They're there, and it's great that we have it, but until it's in the chart, it really
Did
doesn't.
y'all know that?
Well, I know they're valid, but I got a couple on my desk. Well, not on my desk, but in it.
Get it in the chart, right?
I
Yes.
have it done today.
Yeah, and that's that reminder, right? And that's what's so beneficial about these trainings is, right, just reminding us of what is expected, because it's a lot. We have a lot on our plate, right? Working in the profession that we do. And so everyone is human, and this is just friendly reminders of what we need to do for our due diligence, right? For the services we provide. Yes.
Absolutely.
So upload those ROIs or they don't count.
Thanks, Nat. So this is what it looks like for our clients when they're reading through their paperwork packet. It says, I voluntarily consent to participate in a mental health evaluation and or medical treatment by staff from WC Health. I understand that following the evaluation and or treatment, complete and accurate information will be provided concerning each of the following areas. So that's the benefits of the therapeutic services, alternative treatment modes and services, the manner in which treatment will be administered, expected side effects from the treatment, and probable consequences of not receiving treatment. The evaluation or treatment will be conducted by a licensed individual. So it kind of outlines what that could look like. A licensed clinician, therapist, or individuals supervised by any of the licensed individuals. Treatment will be conducted within the boundaries of Nevada law for licensed clinical social workers, licensed social workers, marriage and family therapists, and licensed clinical professional counselors, medical doctor, doctor of osteopathy, nurse practitioner, and physician's assistant. Which is why it's important that we introduce ourselves to folks, because there's a lot of different provider types here.
Absolutely. So again, as Audrey mentioned, right, each of our clients has the right to withdraw their consent to treat, right, and also releases of information. Written requests, right? So they would have to at any time by providing a written request, right? If it's not documented, it did not happen. And that once they withdraw their consent to treat, then they are no longer permitting us at WC Health to provide any treatment. So, and remember, our consents only last for 12 months. So that's why, as an agency, we do it at the beginning of the year to adhere, right, for our clients. And now that we have a lot of the paperwork through the portal that the clients can sign, so there is some ease there, and we'll see how that transitions over time. But so January is a busy month, right, for our reception and our reception and our front desk, and also for those who just see like one particular department at WC Health, right? If I'm a therapist, right, and I started meeting with a client in May, I'm going to make sure that they fill out new paperwork and that their chart's up to date before I continue to see them. So also making sure and looking, right, to double check, right, because there are clients that cases slip through the cracks, right, or it doesn't get uploaded. So just having that communication and always looking, right? Does my client have all of their information in documents in EHR? That's also a good rule of thumb too, because if the charts aren't compliant in that manner, then the rest of the chart is not compliant. So we kind of throw everything out the window of what we had done because of one thing missing.
Right.
Yeah. So just all we can do is our best, right? That's all we can do. And really, and knowing what is expected of us, and that way we can do our best. Yay.
So more on the ROIs. As Shanita was discussing, we do have different ROIs. So this would not include the emergency contact. This is, Nat, can you actually share the ROI form that we have?
Yeah, keep
In
talking
general?
and I'll look for it.
Okay. So we have different types that ensure the patient's consent and confidentiality is respected. And they can serve different purposes. So we have a substance abuse information ROI that is completed by the therapist or the person who is giving that substance abuse diagnosis, and is for insurance purposes, so that insurance can communicate about PAR, prior authorization requests, and justification for services. We have an HIV treatment ROI. So this would be completed when a client discloses an HIV status and wishes to seek medical treatment. That's when we would get that release. And then the psychotherapy note ROI, this is obtained through medical records. If a client is requesting, hey, you know, I want my records from therapy, I want my progress notes, they would have to go through medical records, and then the clinician would be contacted to give their inputs on the justification for releasing those records. The general ROI can be completed by anyone at the agency. A lot of times case management is doing the general ROIs, therapy does the general ROIs, and this is where Natalie is outlining. Again, we don't want to check every box here. A lot of times we are writing in that purpose of disclosure, and then we're writing other to give more of a description. Super important that these are initialed, not checkboxed. The only checkboxes on this one are email, fax, phone, or person, of how are we going to communicate the ROI.
Yes. So, and then only one of these can be filled out, right? I authorize WC Health to release records to, let's just say, Dieter, right? Vocational rehab. So they're going to write vocational rehab, the address, the phone number, the fax number. Also, what I learned, right? So if they're checking the box email, well, there better be an email in the way to release the information, right? I was like, oh, that's fascinating. If it's by phone, there better be a phone number in the, so it has to align. So I had learned that recently. So if I have vocational rehab here, then I'm going to mark an X here, right, on the other side to obtain. So it only goes one way.
So meaning that if we wanted to get information, we would just fill out that side. So you do 2 forms for both communication to and from the agency, the other party.
Yes. And then if not all records, right? Let's just say they started treatment January 1st. This time, right? And they don't want any of their other records, right? They only want this experience. So they would write 1/1/25 to let's just say till St. Patrick's Day, right? I only want my records from the first of the year to St. Patrick's Day. That is it, right? So have them put in that information there, and they have to sign and date. And then also staff will have to initial in order for it to be valid. And also it needs to be uploaded in the chart.
Yes.
Any questions? Does everyone have access to this? Yes, I'm getting some head nods.
Can you send a copy of this to Nicole?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just gonna do that really fast. Okay, and then I'm presenting, I'm going back to our presentation.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So we just went over the different types of those. For case management purposes, the general ROI will be the only one to complete unless a therapist is requesting assistance with getting the HIV treatment ROI. Maybe the client wasn't in person, but they can explain that process and can get help with that, typically done by the therapist.
Yes. And also the substance use information ROI, that also is the responsibility of the therapist. Oh, and look, here it is, right? Just another refresher, right? Initial, and we're not going to initial all of them, right? It looks very not compliant. It looks kind of fraudulent, right? Where the client doesn't know or care or was given direction of what they're giving permission to be disclosed, right? So when their chart gets audited by the state and there's only 2 initials, now we're talking, right? Now it looks like there's been communication and it's not just filling out a form.
I explain it to clients a lot of times too, like a lot of this information may not pertain to you. I have clients who only do therapy services, so they don't have any medical records from WC Health. They don't have any diagnostics or blood tests or just those types of things. So that's how I kind of break it down and explain it, is that not all of this pertains to them. And then I let them know what is important and what we do want to get a release on.
Oh, thanks, Audrey. I'm going to use that. Not all of this pertains to you. And then here for the substance use ROI, right? A lot of times if they're not seeing psych, there's going to be no urinalysis results. Also, pretty much what I only disclose is attendance and treatment recommendation. That's it. That is all that I disclose. So I tell them, do not fill out other things, medicate. Yeah, so just that to read and only initial what applies to them. Here's the,
Then this is what the HIV ROI looks like. And this is specifically to getting treatment for HIV when someone discloses that status. And then a lot of times it's just initialing other HIV information and then specifying for prior authorizations from insurance so that they will cover the cost of treatments. Sometimes it's appropriately, care coordination of services. But again, pertains to each individual. It's on a case-by-case basis.
Can you share that with me? That particular one?
so that would be the responsibility of the therapist, the HIV one, Audrey?
Yes. Until Kate puts it into her training, though we have had case managers help get a signature on it. That's been something that's been done in the past.
And if a client discloses that they have HIV/AIDS, right? And you're looking in the chart and there is no ROI, you could also say, hey, to the client, right? Like, I don't know if you've discussed this with your therapist. Could I let them know for continuity of care, right? So everyone on your team is aware. That also could be a thing.
Yeah. Let us run that by Trish, because we have talked about this in one of our therapy meetings as far as further going through that ROI with case managers to see if that's something that they could assist us, Shanita. So let Natalie and I ask Trish for clarification on that one before we share it. So that if it's going to be completed, that could be a separate training or included in the training that Kate does.
Okay, because it's no, of course it's not in the packet, but
Yeah.
Right. It's just like the substance use ROI that it's therapists, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Therapists and HIV ROI and the substance use disorder.
oh really?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's our responsibility, not yours, which is kind of cool because you guys have a lot of responsibilities.
Wow. Okay, because we've had them sign the substance one.
And we can get more clarification on that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I normally tell them when I do intake is that we'll keep that one because it's normally like maybe in a group where they're filling out, and just tell them like this one will fill out privately one-on-one because you don't want to disclose if you don't want to disclose.
And because at the intake, if they haven't seen a provider like psychotherapy, they wouldn't have that diagnosis. So it's based on the diagnosis. And that's where we would come in with the ROI.
It's not just a disclaimer that they've used substances. When they fill out that ROI, it means that they have been assessed by, a licensed therapist, any of those credentials that we discussed earlier, and then it would be filled out because we're sending that to insurance as a diagnosis, as an F code, and only certain providers can give F codes for treatment.
Okay.
So that's where it falls to the responsibility of the therapist. But I do know what you're saying, Shanita, where case management has helped get that done because some of our clients haven't ever come in person. Some of our clients do their appointments from housing. And so we'll ask Trish, we meet with her on Thursdays and see a little bit more of the direction she wants to continue to go with that. As far as getting case management to help once that diagnosis has been given, or to keep that solely on the responsibility of the therapist and needing to have clients come in to get that completed.
Did anybody else have something they wanted to share? I think so. We're going to take another break. When we come back, I'm going to be having a MSW student intern join us. Her name is Sophia. So when I have someone on the camera, that's who it's going to be. And so we'll see everyone at 10:08. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. How on earth? I'm gonna put my personal cell phone number in the chat. And so I tried to do individual chat, but it won't let me. So if you want to reach out at noon, we can have a conversation, text, or we can schedule a time. Or I can send an invite in Google Meet. So I just want to let you know that for Shamika or anybody else. Okay, confidentiality. So again, this is Sophia. Hello, she's a MSW student intern from UNR, and this is really good information for all of us to have. Yes. So confidentiality in our psychotherapy notes, ROI. It's important to read the following definition to understand the defining factors of psychotherapy notes, right? It is vital that before anything, a type of therapy note is released, it's discussed. So you always, if a client is requesting their therapy progress notes, you're going to have them reach out to medical records is what you're going to do, right? And then based on that, they will reach out to Trish and she will communicate with the clinician and to determine that. And again, our primary focus is to cause no harm. So yeah, it's most likely would only be a letter from the therapist of the diagnosis, attendance, and if they're engaged in treatment and if they're making progress toward their treatment goals. Did you have anything to add to that, Audrey?
Yeah, maybe just to kind of explain to the team that there would be situations where a therapist would not release the record because it would be detrimental. Like I can give the example, sometimes clients are going through court, maybe they're going through custody, but some of the nature of what's bringing them into therapy, if that was shared with the judge, it would be more harmful than helpful to their case. And so that's where it's a conversation with the clinician once Trish receives that record. And that's why a therapist might write a letter kind of outlining what the client has been working on, treatment plan goals, maybe even would release the treatment plan and the AMA. Those are things that are more readily available as opposed to some of the progress notes that would be found in the chart. And again, is completely on a case-by-case basis, and sometimes is not going to be detrimental at all to a client's well-being to have that record. Sometimes it is, though, and in those cases, that's where it would not be released.
Mm-hmm. And as a clinician, as I'm writing my progress notes, I write them as if the client were right behind me, reading my note as I'm typing it, and that I could testify in front of a grand jury or court of law, right? Like what I documented. So that's the lens that I use when I'm documenting my progress notes, as if the client were reading it and if I were testifying in court.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that way of like keeping it simple, describing what happened, but without too much intimate details. Yeah.
Right. And confidentiality is upheld in all of our documentation, right? Like a client could come in and tell us about, their relationship with their brother, but in our notes, we're not giving any names. We're not making it identifiable that we could then trace back, oh, brother is so-and-so. We would say a family member, a relative. We also uphold confidentiality in documentation as well.
Yeah.
So a little bit about those psychotherapy notes. Like Natalie said, this all needs to go through medical records. When that person is going through medical records, they will sign releases of information for that. For whatever it is that they're requesting, the psychotherapy notes, medical notes, or medical records, all of those things. What else does this say? Yeah. And we kind of differentiated the psychotherapy notes from medical records. They're a little bit different in nature. And so that's why it would first go through the clinical director.
And there's a difference between the AMA, right, the psychosocial, right? That is more likely to be released with an ROI to another agency due after ROI. And sometimes, because people want the therapy progress, yeah, but more likely the assessment.
Yeah. So the AMA treatment plans and attendance letters can be released right then and there by the therapist to the client. There's no ROI needed for those to release it directly to that person. If they wanted it sent elsewhere, then we would have an ROI completed for that. But when they're requesting the progress notes, that's when they would need to go through medical record.
Okay, and are some from working with I used to work with therapy too, you guys. From working with therapy, don't they not allow some of the progress notes because they may be a little detailed in certain things? Okay, because I know we had a situation where a client wanted what the therapist was saying about them. They asked for an ROI, they did an ROI, but we couldn't release that because that's a note, not your treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where it gets pretty case by case, and it's a good point to bring up and to recognize. The client can always, if they're coming to you as the case manager, and they have questions about their diagnoses, they have questions about whatever it is, always refer them back to the clinician who provided that so that they can have those conversations. Can really help with rapport building, can really help with their understanding of why those diagnoses may have been given, why the course of treatment is what it is, can be really beneficial to the relationship.
Absolutely. Always refer back to the therapist. And because that question, like why, because then that could be a whole therapy session of why they're wanting that information or why it's important to them or what their intention is, right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So confidentiality, exclude from psychotherapy notes defined as, right? So medication, prescription monitoring, right? That would be from their psychiatrist, those psych notes, ROI, counseling sessions, start and stop times is very important. Also with case management, right? You're billing for time, right? And units, right? And 15-minute increments, right? Yes. So that's very important. And the modalities, right, and frequencies of treatment is documented. So any summary of diagnoses, functional status, the treatment plan, symptoms, prognosis, and progress to date. In order for the medical provider to release that, again, refer to medical records. And if a client is very adamant about that, refer them to their provider to have those conversations.
Definitely. So mandated reporting. This is one that is really important to the work that we're doing to the populations that we serve specifically at WC Health. And in the state of Nevada, we are all mandated reporters, is how Nevada defines it, right? Is that every individual, every community member is a mandated reporter, that we all aspire to be promoting wellness and safety for all vulnerable populations, which include children, older adults, or people with disabilities. So that could be an intellectual disability, could be physical disability, or limitations with those things. So in Nevada, mandated reporter laws require certain professionals to contact law enforcement when they learn of. So though we're all mandated reporters and we can all make reports, we can all follow these guidelines. If you have a license in the state of Nevada, or you're working in certain entities and agencies, there are penalties or consequences for not mandated reporting. For Natalie or I, we could lose our license if we fail to report child abuse or neglect, or elder abuse, neglect, exploitation, isolation, or abandonment of people 60 years of age or older. So there's child protective services, and then there's adult protective services. And this is nationwide. No matter what county you're in, there are going to be these reporting bodies that you can contact. What's really cool now is that you can make reports online. So I've had the experience where sometimes I'm on hold and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on hold to make a report, but you can go online and you can make a report immediately if you're just putting that information into that online report. Mandated reporters also report vulnerable person abuse, so abuse, neglect, exploitation, or isolation, or abandonment of disabled people with disabilities, patients with non-accidental bullet wounds or stab wounds, or patients with serious burns. So those would be things to report.
Yes, mandated reporting, depending on the case, is a Nevada misdemeanor for mandated reporters to knowingly fail to report abuse and or neglect. Penalties include up to 6 months in jail. Ooh. Or up to $1,000 in fines. So it's not ideal.
Mm-hmm. So relating to our scope, right? The scope that we are as a provider, the penalties are going to be different. I can't strongly enough encourage, though, that as case managers, sometimes clients tell you things that they might not be telling their doctors. They might not be telling in group therapy sessions. That you spend a lot of intimate contact time with these clients. It is a relationship, and there is a level of trust there. If these things are being told to you in sessions or in your conversations with clients, I would encourage you to advocate for them in this way, that, hey, you know what you're telling me right now, that's abuse or that's neglect. And I do need to make a report on that, or I'd like to make a report with you on that, and can engage them in that process too. Can be something that you do together. The only time to not do that with a client, and where you might instead talk to a supervisor, talk to the therapist, is if that person is the perpetuator of the abuse or of the neglect. That's when you would not include them in the process, because it would be a safety concern. That if they know this report is going to be called in, you're calling law enforcement and APS, CPS, that could be potentially harmful to the situation.
Also, if you're making, well, as a therapist, I always inform that, because that also, well, and as our, when we're meeting with our clients, like, I'm a mandated reporter, right? If you disclose these information that you're a harm to yourself and or others, or someone else is in a vulnerable situation that is being physically, mentally, and basic needs neglect, right? That I have to make the call, and that I wouldn't necessarily, if they were the perpetrator, but to let them, like, I have to call, or if that client is, it's very circumstantial, but I've learned my lesson where I have made a call. I worked at a acute hospital, and there was a minor having sex with his girlfriend who was also a minor, and I reported it, and I didn't inform the family that I had done that. Big mistake. Then I came back to the hospital, and I was on the unit on the boys' hall. It was not good, because I didn't disclose that I was going to call, right? Had I disclosed that it wouldn't have been a surprise, right? So I have learned, for me personally, I will always inform, like, I have no choice. This is what I have to do, but I don't want you to be blindsided And so I'm going to inform you so that you do not think I'm going behind your back. I have told you what I have to do. So that is my personal experience. Because I've learned definitely the hard way.
Yeah. And it's different where case management is not deemed mandatory reporting in scope. But you can still be that safety personnel for individuals, and you can still, when these concerns come up, raise alarm, kind of give that education piece. Hey, what you're telling me right now, that's abuse or that's neglect. And can have those conversations and can really help support that individual by creating that tie with social services.
And so here's a list of mandated reporters for elderly and vulnerable person abuse in Nevada. So physicians, dentists, dental hygienist, chiropractor, optometrist, podiatrist, medical examiner, a resident doing their residency, interns, professional and practical nurses, physician assistants, and perfusionists. I think we've
looked that one up before. Somebody who works with medical equipment in an agency. So yeah,
you remembered. I did not remember.
I might be missing some parts, but they're in a medical setting. They have a job in a medical setting. Also psychiatrists, psychologists, MFTs, CPCs, KDACs, alcohol and drug counselors, music therapists, athletic trainers, drivers of an ambulance, paramedics, and licensed dietitians.
Woo. Okay. So we went over that list, right? So anyone who has a license or limited license issued under the provisions of Chapter 653 of the NRS statutes, right? Or other persons providing medical services, licensed or certified in the practice to practice in the state, right? So there's a lot of individuals who have contact with who have interactions with individuals that are mandated reporters. So it appears who are getting currently abused, neglected, exploited, isolated, and or abandoned in Nevada. And if, depending on where the abuse happens, that's where you will make the report. Also, there are some states where there is no statute of limitation for sexual abuse, depending on the state. So I believe California now has it that there's no statute of limitation. So I've had adult clients who are sexually abused as a minor who can report because there's no statute of limitations in the state of California. So I'm not necessarily making that report, but she did it for herself, right? Because she has all the information, and I wasn't obligated to do it because she wasn't a minor. So wherever you're reporting is where the events happened, right? Mm-hmm. So a particular county or state, just to be aware of that.
Yeah, and to speak to that part a little bit, that's where, in working with our clients, again, we can encourage them to self-advocate, because if they fall out of some of the parameters of no longer being a minor, well, then it's not a mandatory report, but it still can be reported. They can still seek that, if it's justice that they're looking for, if it's a place to be able to express and to make that report, they can still do those things. We would just want to encourage that that's their decision and their determination, whether or not they do that.
Yeah. Also, they know who here has made a report? Raise your hand. Just Audrey and myself. Okay. And they ask a lot of questions. And so the more information that I have, that's why I'll say, hey, I'm going to call, why don't you stay with me to provide information, right? The more information, because they're asking all the questions. And if I don't have the answer, it's, yes, we're making the report, but are we providing our like due diligence of the report? So the more information, the better. So that's what I have found as well, is to have the most information so that when I do make a report, that it's an informative report.
Yeah. And this would be kind of tying confidentiality into that. If you're making a mandated report, you do not have to uphold confidentiality. If you have an address, you give an address. If you have a date of birth, you give a date of birth. That's where confidentiality does not hold up in those situations.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. Employment. So if an individual provides in-home services, right? Also an agency to provide nursing in the home, person who operates or who's employed by or contact service of intermediate services. So those, anybody who has eyes on a client, right?
Yes. As well as employees of the Department of Health and Human Services, except the state long-term care ombudsman appointed pursuant to NRS codes, and any of her advocates or volunteers. Employees of law enforcement agency or county's office for protective services, or adult or juvenile probation officers. People who maintain or are employed by a facility or establishment that provides care for older persons or vulnerable adults. People who maintain or are employed by services as a volunteer for an agency or service which advises persons regarding the abuse, neglect, exploitation, isolation, or abandonment of an older adult or vulnerable person. People who own or are employed by a funeral home or mortuary. People who operate or are employed by a peer support recovery organization. People who operate or are employed by a community health worker pool, as defined in NRS, or with whom a community health worker pool contracts to provide the services of a community health worker.
Yes. Okay. What should be done in a mandated reporting situation? So once a situation has been, you've become aware of a situation, please report to your immediate supervisor within 1 hour of discovery. A report, and remember, you're documenting this as well in EHR. I also like to get the name if I'm speaking to an individual on the phone at Child Protective Services. I ask them their name, and then depending on if the supervisor deems the report to be investigated further, it will be given a case number, right?
Well,
Or a reference.
it's always given a reference number. When you call in, anytime you call in, you get a reference number, but that might not be the case number, because sometimes those reports are only information. There's not enough for them to go out to further investigate. So sometimes it's just the reference number, but they will always give you that number if you ask for it. And a lot of times you don't have to ask for it because they'll give it to you. But really, it's an important thing for documentation that you can have that reference number.
I've had to ask for it in my experience. Also asking the name of the individual I'm speaking with, the time I called, and the reference number. So I'm documenting that in the phone now. And just making sure that you report to the correct agency, right? So if it's out of state or a different county, just know that you make a report where the event happened.
Yeah. I've also had the experience where, a client was expressing concerns to me, and it didn't fall under, criteria for a mandated reporting situation, but I've called a welfare check before, and, the client has asked that I do that on their behalf, and I'm more than willing to, if that's something that a client wants for me to do. So when you call the non-emergency, in non-emergency out here, it's Metro. they will also give you a reference number as well. So all of that can be put into documentation,
Mhm.
which is really nice.
Yeah, so something's happening right then. I told you that individual that was neglecting their medical care, right? That individual called non-emergency for a welfare check. Then that person was taken to the hospital because they were not meeting their basic needs and they were treated for a blood infection.
Yeah.
It still is wild. So the incident, also document the incident and actions taken in EHR, right, as a case management note for a case manager, right, because that can be, it is documented as a case management note because that is a billable service. In therapy, not so much, but we would document that in another note. And so inform your supervisor always, and then we want to do it and make the report in a timely manner.
Yes.
Why are we not?
It's your last slide.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording for this training.